Alice Yu. I am the Associate Director at the Center for East Asian Studies at the University of Arizona. So the Center for East Asian Studies, also known as CEAS, is a national resource center supported by the Title VI grant from the U.S. Department of Education. And today we have our annual China Town Hall meeting, and now we are about to start the second half, the local portion. That's going to be hosted by Professor Andre Oñate. So now please allow me to introduce Professor Oñate to everyone. Okay. Professor Andre Oñate is an academic, diplomat, and international business leader with expertise in U.S.-China relations. He has been an adjunct professor at U of A since 2016. Before that, he held director and consular roles at the State Department, the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, and the National Security Council, specializing in strategic trade and diplomacy. He has published widely on Chinese politics and global security. During his 20 years of living in China, Professor had also led international business initiatives and held high-ranking positions at various groups and corporations. So during this second half, Professor Oñate will share his screen and do a slide presentation. And we will leave the floor open for Q&A at the end of his presentation. So please leave your questions for Professor in the Q&A box. And also, I will read out the more general questions during the Q&A session after Professor has done with his presentation. However, if you have detailed or specific questions for Professor regarding any of his slides, please feel free to type them out in the chat box during the presentation, and I will invite the Professor to answer them. Okay, so now please join us to welcome Professor and to start his presentation.
Am I on?
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, thank you very much. There seems to be reverberating this. There's something wrong with the sound.
Yeah, I think we can hear a little bit echoing in your voice. Let's see. Kevin, could you help
Professor, you seem to be there seems to be another, like, multiples of you in this meeting. Maybe you join this meeting on different devices or on.
No, so what do you want to do?
Okay, I'm
You want me
gonna
to leave this one and try again?
No, hold on one second. I'm gonna remove the other versions of you.
Oh.
And see if that helps. Okay, try again. Try saying something, Professor.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Yeah, much better. Yeah.
But
Can you share your screen?
But I can't see you.
Do you see the Zoom button on the bottom of your screen?
Yeah.
Okay, click on that.
Oh, there you are.
Can you
Okay,
hit
are we
share?
back?
We can hear you. We can see you great.
Okay.
We would like to see your presentation. Can you click on the green share button?
Yeah, but before I do, for the audience, I just want to explain that everything that we heard on the first hour, some of those issues I'm going to be talking about, but in a visual sort of way. And that I am starting, that my presentation is based on the first 100 days of the Trump administration's policy towards China, almost on a calendar basis. But you'll see that I'm going to go in different directions as we go through. So with that said, All right, can we see now?
Looks great.
Yeah.
It's important. The 2020 trade agreement, which was not discussed in the first hour, but I think it's very important for all of you to know why the Trump administration is going to revisit this agreement, because China did pledge to purchase $200 billion in U.S. products in the coming years. And this is a signing of the agreement January 15, 2020. But here's the problem, that China didn't buy any of the extra $200 billion that they had agreed to in the agreement. And that's going to be something that I'm sure is going to stick in the craw of the Trump administration when and if they do ever get to the negotiating table, which they're going to have to. During the Biden administration, nothing happened. Biden says we're not there yet, 2 years into his administration. Now I want you to all look at, oh, what did I do now?
Professor, we can see your screen.
Okay. You can see it?
Perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here, I want you to just take a few minutes, all of you out there watching, and look at the trade deficit. U.S.-China trade relations started in 2000. The U.S. is the one that supported China's entry into the World Trade Organization in 2001. And from that point on, as you can see, the trade between the two countries, but you can also see just how unbalanced the trade was. And you can see from the blue just how much we purchase here in the US. And you can see by 2018 or so, during the Trump administration, China actually bought $539 billion worth of US goods, but we only sold about 120 billion to China. And this is going to stick in the craw of the US when and if they do get into the negotiating table. You heard the experts say that so far there are no diplomatic talks that are scheduled between the two sides, and there are not. But when they do, they're going to have to look at these numbers and come to grips with them, because this is what has happened in the last 24 years. You look at this trade deficit, you know, I don't know how the Trump administration is going to handle it. And also the fact that China has not fulfilled its obligation on the 2020 treaty that he signed. Here, I just want to give you an idea of what it is that we're exporting. And the first one, soybeans. Please look at that carefully, because we're going to see soybeans again. And just how, if this tariff war doesn't end and China stops buying our soybeans as they have, because this is the #1 export, U.S. export to China, you're going to see what effect it's going to have on U.S. farmers. That's coming up in a little bit. What do we buy from China? Well, you can see last year, mostly in hardware, transmission, computers, office, electric batteries. You heard about the discussion on batteries and the discussion that this is one technological item that we do buy from China. But this just gives you an idea of what we import as opposed to what we export to China. And already this year, the U.S. has the largest trade deficit already in the first 2 months, almost $53 billion. So we're not stopping buying, but I don't know what this tariff war is going to, how it's going to affect us. It's got to affect it, as you're going to see on the percentage of tariff taxes that the Trump administration has already put into place. The first one, obviously, that all of us are concerned about. Last one, we can see that it's already damaging relations with Canada and Mexico. So on January 20th, the day that President Trump took office, we start our timeline. We see already Musk talking with the Chinese about his car. And of course, China already has an even larger EV market than Tesla does. The only time I think Trump brought up China in his inauguration speech is that he accused Panama of allowing China to gain influence in the Panama Canal. And remember, he said he would take the Panama Canal back by force if necessary. And this is my 2 cents worth. And I might say here that one of the interesting things about the first 100 days, I couldn't find anything on Taiwan. The only issue that dominated the newspapers and dominated the professional journals, tariffs. But I want you all to know that if we do use force to reclaim the Panama Canal, China will use force on Taiwan. You can hold me to that. Here's TikTok. I think all of you are familiar with TikTok. This is what the press has said about TikTok. It doesn't, if you subscribe to it or anything that you put into your messages, does that go back to China? They're still working on deciding whether or not to ban TikTok in this country. So it all starts February 1st, slaps a 10% tariff on Chinese imports, but he did this on other countries as well. But we're talking about China here. And you heard there towards the end of the first hour, the discussion on fentanyl. Somehow we're going to have China face reality. I teach a course on the center of humiliation when foreign powers forced opium into China for 100 years, the center of humiliation. And it's interesting to see now it's kind of the reverse, that China is now dumping fentanyl into those countries that initially sold or traded with opium in China, turning China into an opium-addicted country. So fentanyl is the opium now of the relationship. 1 minute. It's amazing. The discussion on the first hour you heard about rare earth metals. I don't know if you're familiar with this, what they are, but China does control most of the rare earth metals. And that's one of the things that China has over us, that if we have this trade war, China will stop selling rare earth metals to the US, and that's going to set our technology back, because that is important now in the development of chips, for example. Because they're going to go up and up. And again, you heard the panels in the first hour talk about the relationship between Xi Jinping and Trump, but they didn't get into a lot of the details. They know each other very well. So I don't know what they talked about, but I'm hoping that the two will at some point set up the first meeting to resolve this trade issue or the tariff issue. I just focus on agriculture. Normally, in my regular class, I do all of them, but I don't have the time here, but agriculture is very important. And I want you to look at this because this is becoming an issue, that most of the places where China has land, there's also some military base, US military base in that location. And you'll see in just a moment how it comes to become a major issue. But just look at this, just how much land, farmland, China owns and where it owns it. if they do impose tariffs on agriculture. This is what we're talking about to prevent China from. In fact, by the way, here in the state of Arizona, the state Senate tried twice to pass a bill to prevent Chinese members of the Chinese Communist Party from buying land in the state of Arizona. The laws did not go through, but that's kind of the mind thought, you might say, in Arizona's Congress, in Arizona's legislature. Sorry. Again, fentanyl. Now, this is what's going to happen. Remember the first trade war? I think if there's one section of the U.S. Business that took a major hit, it was the U.S. farmer, and probably the ones that took the biggest hit were the farmers of soybeans. See that soybeans was the number one U.S. export to China. During the trade war, the yellow, it went down considerably. And we're going to see what Trump did to answer the reduction of soybean exports to China. They started going up after 2020 because that's when the agreement was signed.
Hey, Professor.
Yeah.
When you're a little bit far from the mic, I think it's having trouble picking you up.
Okay.
Like this.
I'll be right up on the
Sometimes
mic.
this.
I'll be right up on the mic. But this also gives you an idea of just all around agricultural exports to China, the billions of dollars, how important placing tariffs on agricultural products is going to have on our farming. I couldn't help this. And you can see that $28 billion was in response to the Chinese had stopped buying our soybeans, and other agricultural products. So the Trump administration had to come up with an aid package of $28 billion to help them out. This is going to happen again if this tariff war continues. You heard on the first hour, they talked about technology. They talked about technology and our sales, whether or not we should continue to sell high-tech items to China or not. And so one of the two that I've highlighted here, I could do more, I could do all of them, but these two are so important, I thought I need to spend a few slides on them: quantum computing and hypersonic weapons. And you'll see why in just a moment, why it's so important. Again, it goes to show you because they were talking about national security. And as you can see, at least in this one area, China certainly has a clear lead in quantum encryption. And the fear there is that China is going to use these quantum computers to go into our records. I mean, we will have absolutely no privacy whatsoever if China does ever use the computers for that purpose. This latest statement that China's made quantum research a priority. Well, it's not just that. By the way, at least the U of A has profited from the government trying to keep up with China's advances in quantum computing. The other area that Trump administration imposed higher tariffs, it's on hypersonic weapons. You can see what these weapons can do. You can see the difference between a regular ballistic missile and a hypersonic missile. And China has them already. Concerned about if we ever think that we're going to have any kind of war with China. We're just getting there. And the U of A is also just getting there. So these two very important areas in technology that the U of A has benefited from, computing and also hypersonics. You heard in the discussion in the first hour about students, restrictions on, what was it, restrictions on higher education. And in case you know that right now, there is a movement to send Chinese students back to China here from the US. I want you to see the numbers of Chinese students in the US and US universities today. Now, remember, if you were in the first hour discussion, they were talking about STEM, and that these are right now, I think the Trump administration has a policy on students applying to US universities, if they're in the STEM areas, that they're going to be denied. And so I guess these numbers are going to go down because most of the students are in the STEM fields. I can tell you from a personal perspective, I taught Chinese students for 10 years in China, in Nanjing, co-director of the U of A study abroad program in those days. And I had hundreds of Chinese students in my classes, and most of them were interested in math and science and STEM. So I would think that they're probably going to be, or already are in these numbers for 2025 for this year. And you can see just how many students in China are attracted to STEM as opposed to the US. India obviously is also, but we're talking about China here. And of course, the concern is in the higher education is that these students come here, they get their degrees. I know of one who's got a PhD, for example, and then they return to China to teach what they learned in our school system, and mainly in STEM courses. And that's how China's getting ahead. We looked at quantum computing. We looked at hypersonic technology. I can go through more technologies, but we just don't have time. But I can tell you from my own personal experience that my Chinese students were all over the place, but most of them were interested in STEM. And hundreds of them ended up here at the U of A on my recommendation. On April 2nd, Liberation Day. This is when I guess President Trump decided that everything, he was going to just come right out, and not just China, but Mexico, Canada, European Union. That if these countries didn't get their act together, then that's what he was going to raise tariffs on everyone. Getting back to China. Now we're up to 54%, April 2nd. You remember those little packages? And now they're going to be taxed again because of fear that they might contain fentanyl. And of course, China retaliates. This is, again, it was brought up in the first hour where it's back and forth. You know, whatever we do, China reacts. Whatever China does, we react. So in this case, China retaliates. And we're going to see this pattern as we go through the month of April. And we've already talked about rare earth metals. TikTok, why these delays? I guess he's not convinced that it's really a kind of a secret Chinese weapon. For those of you who like the social media. Now we're up to 104%. This is April 9th. And those small packages raised the tariffs to 90%. Be sure we don't get any fentanyl coming in through those packages from either Hong Kong or the mainland. this little tariff war going on. Both countries just raising to unbelievable levels, never before. So as we speak today, we're up at 145%. I hope that if there's a business person listening in, that I'd like to hear your reaction to this tariff war, and what does 145% mean for your business? So if there's someone out there in business, I don't know if you're importing from China or not, but even if you're not, because I am not an economist, I mean, these numbers are just mind-blowing to me. But perhaps if there's a business person listening in, I would like to hear an explanation as to what this means to you. Now China's up to 125%. And like I'm telling you, watch out agriculture, watch out soybeans if this continues. It'll be worse than the first trade war back in 2016 to 2020. What is happening now is that both sides are trying to line up countries to back them up. China, for example, has gone to the East Asian countries and said, if you back us up, we will lower our tariffs on you. But if you back up the US, then we're going to increase tariffs on you. So there's this tariff war going on, not only between the US and China, but between China and the UN, using other countries to back them up. And so China is really busy right now, and especially in Asia, trying to convince Asian countries that it has a relationship with to buy from China and not from the United States. A couple of days ago, Tuesday, perhaps the first indication that maybe there's something going on in the Trump administration that might just end the trade war. I don't know. Stock markets, usually good indicators of economic markets going up or down. When this was announced, the stock markets rose, as you can see, across the globe. And finally, again on Tuesday, after the secretary made his remarks, President Trump at a White House event did make a statement signaling the possibility of reducing the high tariffs to China substantially, he said, quoting him, but it won't be zero. And of course, China responded positively, so there may be in the next few days some reconciliation between the two. Stay tuned.